Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I just want to say what a wonderful experience it's been to work on something with such bipartisan appeal, and what a pleasure it's been to work with the gentleman from 21 and all of the various groups that have worked on this. We've been working on this for a very long time, probably about at least a year and a half. We've gone through so many drafts I can't even count, because we really wanted to get this right. We wanted to ensure that we were not allowing drug dealers to keep ill-gotten gains. So we listened very carefully to very extensive feedback from law enforcement and from the prosecutors. We met with the ISP, and we didn't go as far as we wanted to with this bill. Our initial draft required conviction. We initially wanted to have it so that you had to actually be convicted of a crime before the state could take your property. But that was a big move on our part, but we were convinced by prosecutors that there were circumstances in which drug dealers could retain ill-gotten gains if we had that requirement in there, so we backed off of it. And ultimately, in the end, we had critique from our original supporters who said that we were too timid. One of the testimonies in committee was he supported the bill, but said that this was too timid, and that we should go as far as some other states have gone in reforming civil asset forfeiture. But we are comfortable at the end of the day that we have arrived at something that ensures that no drug dealer will keep their ill-gotten gains. We've been very careful in that regard to make sure if you have drug money, it will be taken. But what we want to accomplish here is that, yes, they take the drug money, but they don't take your waitressing money. So if there's property that you have that is legitimately yours and has nothing to do with drugs, the state should not be able to take that piece. And that's where we differ from where the law was before. The law before, the standard was proximity. If you had property that was anywhere near drugs, even if it had nothing to do with drugs, the state could seize it. And we felt that that was wrong, and that's one of the principal modifications being made here. So they can take any property that has to do with making drugs, selling drugs, proceeds of drugs, anything like that. But if it's property that has nothing to do with drugs, it can't be seized merely because it was nearby. Another thing we wanted to make sure was that people can still keep their jobs. We live in a state where if you have no car, you probably can't get to work and you probably can't get groceries. And so while these cases are pending, we wanted to be sure that there's some mechanism by which folks, if they post bond and if they can show that the property is not at risk of being disposed of, the person can still use their vehicle and still go to work and still pick up their kids and do whatever they need to do. Unfortunately, despite all of our work, I want to just flag for you, we were not able to reach complete consensus with all of law enforcement. We were able to reach consensus with the Fraternal Order of Police and with the prosecutors, but at the end of the day, there was still opposition, primarily from the sheriffs, and I want to flag for you what it was that they objected to, so you can think through where you stand on this. They were actually supportive of just about everything we're doing in this bill, with the exception of the section at the bottom of page 2 at line 47, where it says, where we are adding the language, mere presence or possession of United States currency without other indicia is insufficient probable cause for seizure. That basically what we're saying there is if there is no other evidence of wrongdoing, nothing, no drugs, no sign of a shady transaction, no other evidence, all there is the mere fact that the person has cash. That is not in itself alone a basis for seizing that cash, which I think is actually in keeping with the law as it is, but we thought it bore it out to make it explicit here. There are people who do business in cash, and that inherently is not a sign that you're a drug dealer, if standing alone, the fact that you have cash. Unfortunately, this remained, and we put the lowest possible standard in here of indicia. So if there's any sign of anything, they don't even need to prove it, just some sign, a whiff of pot, a sign of anything in addition to just cash. But they do need to have that whiff of something, some other indicia of wrongdoing in order to be able to proceed with the seizure. We thought this was important to flag at the point of seizure because this is a civil action, which means you don't have all of the due process rights you would have in a criminal action. You don't have the entitlement to counsel. You don't have the entitlement to public defender. You have to pay for your own attorney. You don't have the benefit of the beyond a reasonable doubt criminal standard. You're dealing with a much lower standard. So what happens in a lot of cases is because it's so expensive to fight these things, people will just walk away from their property because if you have a car worth $800, it's not really worth spending $2,000 on a lawyer to try to get it back. So we want to make sure there's some kind of safeguard on the front end that only the property that really should be seized is getting seized so that a person doesn't end up losing the entire value of their property merely in the process of fighting for it back. So we feel that that's a good provision and that it enhances due process. We ran this bill some time ago by the Attorney General, who agreed that this enhances due process. And I hope that it will win your support. I think it would be a great improvement to our statutes, and we'll happily take any questions.